Welcome to Part 2 of the HTS Classification course. Now we get into the nitty-gritty of the basis to determine proper classification, the GRI, or General Rules of Interpretation. Although this is only 2 pages of the general notes of the tariff schedule, it is the cornerstone reasoning of classification guidelines. This is an overview of the GRI. The idea is if GRI 1 doesn't apply, move to GRI 2. If GRI doesn't apply, move to 3, and so on. Note there's a 3A, 3B, 3C, a 4, 5, 6, and additional notes. Delving into more detail of each GRI, we start with GRI 1, which is the self-evident, we phrase it. Often such items can be found by merely checking the tariff's index. In effect, these items are specifically provided for or describes what products are being classified directly. Bottom line, using the tariff index isn't cheating. Some classifications don't require a whole lot of research or reasoning, which would require using the logic of GRIs 2 through 4, and may be found right in the index. Note the example here of practical joke articles. If you have a practical joke article, you've got the classification. Voila. If GRI 1 doesn't apply, the classifier moves on to the next GRI for guidance. Rule 2A discusses how incomplete or unfinished articles are handled. In the case of a robot assembly line imported over several shipments, it may take a decision from the customs import specialist to allow all the parts to be classified under one end product classification. Normally, items that are knocked down would be shipped together, not over several shipments. In this broker's license test example, the 2 headings that could apply are 9401 and 9403. Because the product more specifically relates to product 9401 than 9403, 9401 is used. 9403 is more broad. In this case, you have a mixture product, more than one material or substances. It is classified to the material heading of that material or substance. If the item being classified isn't specifically provided for, unassembled end product, or a composite good that is provided for, Rule 3A is next explored. Here the theme of specific versus broad holds under 3A. The idea is to zero in on what is the most specific choice, not something watered down. Example, description of by name in one heading that is more specific than the description by class in another heading as follows. So you're seeing that you put it under shavers because they're more specifically provided for than miscellaneous electromechanical domestic appliances. If Rule 3A doesn't apply, move on to the concept of essential character, which is described in Rule 3B. Essential character is determined by the nature of the material or component, its bulk, quantity, weight, or value, or by the role of a constituent material in relation to the use of the goods. An example is the drawing kit. If it says that the compass gives it its essential character, which would be determined possibly through a review of the product, then all the products in the drawing kit are classified as if they were a drawing compass. When rules 3A, which is specific versus broad, or 3B, which is essential character, don't seem to apply, the next rule to try is 3C. This is the last in numerical order in the tariff. This is used when you have an apparent toss-up of two or more possible choices, but not one clearly is superior to the other. For instance, if fabric is 50% polyester and 50% cotton, the classification would be polyester since it falls last in the tariff. Chapter 55 is after Chapter 52. Note that as the tariff progresses, duty rates tend to become more expensive from raw to finished goods. So you can see here under cotton, 19.7%, under other man-made fibers, and if it didn't have a component of wool in it, it'd be considered other, and that's 32%. We've glossed over Rule 4, which indicates picking the classification that is most akin to other products. This is rarely used and is somewhat vague, but could apply when Rules 1 through 3 don't seem to fit. This may be a choice for the import specialist to use when there is a classification that stumps the classifier and no reasonable logic can be used to fit the classification after evaluating Rules 1 through 3. So we move on to how cases are classified. The main concept here is the case is unique to only holding the item inside. The case itself takes the same classification as the item inside. Packing goes hand in hand with this, as most packing could be interpreted as the case the commodity is held. Generally, if the packing material could be reasonably reused, it has to be separately classified, whereas if the packing material, such as a carton, is normally disposed of after the product is used or opened, the cost of the packing is included with the cost of the product and classified as if it were the product. Rule 6 indicates the classifier needs to compare at the same indented outline heading of the tariff. In other words, compare headings to headings, subheadings to subheadings, and so on. When searching for a classification, often one's eye may roam to what appears to be the correct classification, when the above heading level may preclude it from being used. This can happen when the specific description of the product shows up. Kitchen implements made of cotton. There it is, kitchen table implements. However, that's under the subheading of iron or steel. You have copper. Consequently, that is the correct classification. Caution should be used to not get drawn into picking what appears to be the most expedient classification choice. Unlike most of the rest of the world, countries that use the HTS, the U.S. has a special provision applying to parts, where many HTS countries would classify an item as a part of the parent product. The HTS US requires classification of each part where it is specifically provided for. So, an auto mirror isn't a car part, but should be classified under the mirror section of the tariff because it's specifically provided for there. What do we mean by preliminary scrutiny? This is the information about the product that could be questioned to help determine the next research steps. The first full bullets relate to GRI. Chapter notes often preclude or substantiate using that tariff chapter for the product. For example, three-wheel bicycles are excluded from the chapter where bicycles are listed and are considered toys. Obviously, picking the brain of a shipper or supplier of what the product is made of, how much its components cost, what is the main use, etc., can be derived. Some classifications are contingent upon the end use of the product. Finally, it isn't cheating or too easy to consult the tariff's extensive index or the contents. What you may have already been specifically provided for in this index or in the table of contents may narrow down the choices to a heading or subheading level of classification. Try tackling a real question of classification of the April 2007 Customs License Examination. Most classifiers won't have the luxury of selecting from 5 possible choices of which one is correct. However, this is the way the test is given. In this case, the choices fall under chapters 39 or 39 or 94. This example turns out to be rather easy because the answer E already provides for the item being classified. GRI 1 would be the basis of the selection, which is self-evident. And so ends Part 2 of the HTS classification course. Next, we will go into more on classification exercises in Part 3.